Well, hello! Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about a friggin' book. And you already know what the book is, The Final Strife by Saara El-Arifi. And I'm just gonna spoil it for you. I friggin' loved this book. Oh my good god. I just filmed my recent wrap-up where I talk about this book as well. I don't know if that's up already or not, so you may have heard me talk about it already kind of at length because I started gushing. Oops. Yeah, this is an upcoming release. It is scheduled to be released June 21st, and it is an adult fantasy that is inspired by Ghanaian folklore and Arabian myths. Same as in the recent wrap-up, I will give upfront some content warnings. Drug use, drug addiction, and withdrawal symptoms, child death and murder. This is mentioned off-page. You don't see it happening, but it is mentioned a couple times. Forced mutilation and amputation of babies. Also, you don't see it happening, but it is discussed that this happens. Torture is on page. Execution via torture. A suicide attempt, very brief scene. It's not a character who is struggling with suicidal thoughts or ideation. It's more of like a kind of a rash decision in the moment out of frustration and fear and anger for her mother's treatment of her. We have blood magic in this, so content warning for blood. They use blood to draw runes, to do different things with the magic. We do have slavery in this world. It's not extensively shown on page, but you do see a couple times like mentions of the plantations and a couple scenes where you see the plantation and you do see a character or two being whipped on the plantation. Murder, violence, very much a thing. Child abuse, as I said, there's a character who just has a moment of, screw it, I'm just gonna kill myself. And it is due to the excessive verbal and emotional abuse they sustain, as well as some mental and physical abuse as well. We don't see a lot of it necessarily on the page, but it's referenced a fair amount. So in this entirely made-up world, hundreds of years ago, a group of people came over from a different land, the mainland. And these people, there's three groups. There are Embers, who have red blood, there are Dusters, who have blue blood, and Ghostings, who have clear blood. And they came over because of something called the Ending Fire, that basically decimated the entire land that they came from. And the people who made it to this new land started the Warden's Empire, with the Embers with the red blood at the top, because Embers can blood work, where they use their blood to do magic, basically. And they're the only ones that can do this, so they decided to be the rulers. And a quote kind of explaining the different groups is, "Red is the blood of the elite, of magic, of control. Blue is the blood of the poor, of workers, of the resistance. Clear is the blood of the slaves, of the crushed, of the invisible." And this is very much a desert environment that they live in, and their sand is blue, which is fun. Every night, though, there is a tide wind that is basically an incredibly high-velocity sandstorm. So high velocity that if you get stuck out in it, the sand rips the skin from your body. You die. A long time ago, the Ghostings, who were slaves, still are slaves, but they were slaves, and they rebelled and laid siege to the keep, which is where the Embers live and rule from. And their rebellion was pretty quickly struck down by the Embers, and a lot of people were killed. And from then on, the Ghostings are forced to have their babies, when they're born, mutilated, basically. Forced amputation. They have their hands cut off and their tongues cut out. So that's fucked up and terrible. And because they cannot speak and they do not have hands to do, sign language as we would think of it, they came up with their own language, though. But basically, nobody other than Ghostings bothers to learn it. And we are following two characters really heavily, and then a third one that, is almost a primary character, and I could see that moving forward, they're probably going to be, definitely a primary character, but they were a little bit more secondary in this, in my opinion. And the characters are Sila, who's kind of like the main one, and then Anur, who is like co-main, and then Hassa, who is the one that I was saying is kind of a secondary character, but like almost primary. So to cover the three characters, I'll just give the synopsis thing about them in order to like not ramble too much. Sila dreams of days growing up in the Resistance, being told she would spark a revolution that would free the Empire from the red-blooded ruling class's tyranny. That spark was extinguished the day she watched her family murdered before her eyes. Anur has been told she's nothing, no one, a disappointment, by the only person who matters, her mother, the most powerful ruler in the Empire. But when Sila and Anur meet, a fire burns between them that could consume the kingdom and their hearts. Hassa moves through the world unseen by upper classes, so she knows what it means to be invisible. But invisibility has its uses. It can hide the most dangerous of secrets, secrets that can reignite a revolution. And when she joins forces with Sila and Anur, together these grains of sand will become a storm. As the Empire begins a set of trials of combat and skill designed to find its new leaders, the stage is set for blood to flow, power to shift, and cities to burn. So there is a lot of character growth and development in this book. When we first meet, specifically Anur, but also Sila, I mean, like I said, Sila in the beginning is addicted to drugs. And I appreciated having a main character who was dealing with this, who was dealing with drug addiction and eventually withdrawal symptoms. I don't know, it's a real part of life for a lot of people from all walks of life. You know what I mean? So it's nice to see that. And I don't want to say to like normalize it, because I don't want it to be normal to be addicted to drugs, but just to like bring some light to it and like, hey, this is a thing that happens sometimes, and this is kind of what it can be like for people. You get what I'm saying? It was just very appreciated seeing that. And Anur, like it says, she is the daughter of one of the wardens, and as I mentioned in the wrap-up, like, one of the tools that the wardens use to kind of keep things going how they want is education, or lack of education, and blocking access to education for some. So Anur is, number one, a very spoiled girl when we first meet her. Very spoiled, living in the lap of luxury, and wants what she wants and wants to get her way, and just like doesn't expect anything else other than getting her way, and kind of acts very whiny and immature when she doesn't get her way. And it's, when you first meet her, you're like, oh my god, shut up, you whiny brat. Like, she's like throwing tantrums and stuff, like literally stomping her feet, being like, no. It's like, dude, what the fuck? But it makes sense why. And she's so ignorant. Just so naive and ignorant. I mean, coming from a place of utmost privilege and just having such an ignorant view and understanding of the way the world works, and just being like, well, why don't people just do this? And Sila is like, girl, what? Are you stupid? And like, she is kind of stupid when you first meet her. It makes sense why she is, because she is so sheltered. So again, it makes sense why she's like that, but it is very obnoxious at first. As we go on and we get to know them better, like I said, there is a lot of character growth that happens, and I really liked seeing all of that unfold. I found the characters to be so interesting and complex and just so well fleshed out. They felt like real people, like very realistic. They made sense. Their actions made sense. The way they behaved made sense for the context of their experiences and whatever that we knew about. And yeah, I really liked it. As it was going on, I was just getting more and more invested in them. And by the end, I love them so much, and I just want them to be okay. And the world was really interesting to me. The magic system, the blood magic, and like, there's obviously limitations to it. You can't just like use your blood forever or you'll die or like pass out. So they can only do it for so long. And like, the runes that they have to draw, like, have to be a very specific way or they won't work properly. And it's like a set number of runes that they have that they can use in combination to do different things. And it was just really cool. All made sense to me. And you like learn more about the blood magic as it goes on, and it gets more interesting. And I really appreciated too that there's obviously oppression happening, a very brutal caste system that they have here that is very oppressive. And like I said, there's slavery here, and I mean, people are being forced to be amputated and have their tongues cut out and shit. It's very terrible. And like the ghostings, even the dusters like don't have it great, and like they're getting definitely the shit end of the stick. But the ghostings, like, people basically act like they just don't exist. Like they're literally just kind of invisible. They're like, oh, they're the slaves or whatever. We don't talk to them. They're just there and they do their thing and like whatever. It's terrible. But I appreciated that it wasn't based on like skin color, race, gender, anything like that. And in this world, like homosexuality is just a thing. Like queerness is just a thing, and it's fine. And nobody's like being oppressed for being queer. And trans people, trans, non-binary, two-spirit, they have a name for them in this world. So if someone is addressing a crowd, they will say, ladies and gentlemen, and Musawa. Musawa is what they call them. And like Hassa, one of our kind of a main character, as I said, she is a ghosting, and she is a trans woman. And you only know she's a trans woman because it's mentioned like a couple times just in passing in conversation of like the herbs that she took to transition her body to like the hormones and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was really cool. And like I said, there's homosexuality, and it's not a big deal. It's not like, ooh, you're gay. It's bad. Nobody thinks it's bad. It's just like a normal part of their culture. So that was really nice as well. The plot and the pacing, I said in the wrap-up, I almost DNF'd this book. I was very seriously considering DNFing it. Around 20%, I was just kind of like, not getting grabbed by this. It was taking me forever. It was like, I was 3 weeks in, I want to say, three and a half weeks into reading it, and I was only at like 20% or so. So I was just kind of like, dude, this is like kind of a struggle. And it wasn't that I thought anything was bad. It was just, I wasn't getting grabbed, and I think part of that is a me thing. Number one, I've just been reading very slow this year in general, and it's been kind of a struggle for me to like get really grabbed by things. And like, I don't want to say I've been in a reading slump, because I haven't been in a reading slump, but like a reading like dent, you know? And so I think it was partially that, because in the beginning of April especially, I was just like, ugh, reading. Oh my God. Like I want to, but then I don't, and I start to, and then I'm just like, oh, I read a chapter, I'm good. So it's partially that, and then also ebooks. I've said this so many times. I don't know what it is, but reading ebooks, I always struggle to get really invested and like gripped by the story. So I think it was a combination of that. And I mean, the pacing obviously is a little slower in the beginning. Duh. Because you're being introduced to the world, you're being introduced to the characters, and Sila, who's kind of like the main character, especially in the beginning, in the first like several chapters, the first little bit, we're basically just following her, and she's just 100% focused on getting drugs. So nothing is really happening in the plot for the first little bit. So you're just kind of like, okay, she's trying to get drugs. And you're getting to know her, and you're getting to know other characters, and you're getting to know the world. So it's like you're learning stuff, and like, it makes sense why this is how the author did it, but it was a little slower pacing. It's the first book in a series. You have to like take a little bit of time to like know what the hell is going on in this world and who the hell these people are. So I think it was done well. It just, that in combination with the me thing part of it just made it like very slow going for me. But like I said, I appreciated how it was done, because the world building part of it, like getting to know the world, I personally didn't find it info dumpy at any point at all. I thought she developed the world really like naturally and organically. So we were learning about stuff, even though we're following Sila, who's just like trying to get drugs, we're learning more about the drug that they have. We're learning why they have this drug, kind of the mythology surrounding the tree that this drug comes from. We are learning about the caste system because we're seeing some ghostings. She's interacting with Hassa, who is kind of her friend. and we're seeing the language that the ghostings have with their hands or with their arms. And Scylla does speak this. She can understand it. She can't do it back, but she can understand it. So she just speaks to Hassa. And it just felt very natural and very like, I'm on this journey with you, learning about this stuff. And it was just done really well. I thought it was really solid. Once the plot started going, though, and picking up, it was around, like, 30%. Like I said, I was about to DNF. I legit was very seriously like, I don't know, it's been, like, 3 weeks, and I'm just, like, I'm really struggling here. Maybe I should just give it up. But I told myself no, because it was a NetGalley E-arc, and I have already DNF'd one of those this year. And while I'm an avid DNF'er, it's like, girl, you can't just keep DNFing these arcs that you get. So I was like, I'm going to give it to 50%. At least 50%. And if I'm still really struggling, fine. But around 30%, I was like, okay, here we go. Here we go. Now we're cooking with gas. So it started to pick up, and I just started getting more and more and more invested in the plot and in the characters and what was happening. And yeah, I fucking loved it by the end of it. Plot-wise, I will say there was one thing towards the end that felt a little convenient. Like I said, there's these trials that are happening. It's called the Actabar, and it's like over the course of like a couple months. And the trial part, if you love that type of shit in books, like, ooh, trials by combat, trial of strength and skill and knowledge, you might be disappointed because it's like a large part of the book is the training for that. We have a character who is trying to become one of these wardens, but like the actual trials when they happen are not these long drawn out things. They're done and over with pretty quickly. I personally loved that. I thoroughly appreciated it. But if you like really eat that shit up, you might be disappointed and be like, oh, okay, I guess we're not really focusing on the trials, because we're not, which I appreciated. One of the trials toward the end, something kind of convenient happens that felt a little like a plot convenience. But again, because I wasn't really, like, the trials are kind of the least important part here. I mean, they're not the least important, but, like, it was fine for me. I didn't really care. I recognized it as being, like, a little convenient, but then I was just like, well, whatever. Who fucking gives a shit? Like, it didn't bug me. Some other things that didn't bug me, I talked about this in the wrap-up. We have a bit of a love triangle in this book, and I don't necessarily automatically hate love triangles. I'm not someone that's just like, a love triangle? No, get it away from me. So they don't piss me off, but a lot of times they feel really forced. They feel like, I don't buy it. I don't buy that this dynamic would be like this. However, in this, it totally made sense why this was happening. It just felt so realistic in this book. Like, it totally made sense. And the way the characters, like, interacted with each other within this, and how they handled it, and how it all played out and ended up, just so great. So great. It just made sense. I just keep saying about this book, like, all this shit just made sense. It just worked because it made sense. Also, more shockingly, in this book, we have my most hated trope of all time, the big lie. And it didn't bug me. It didn't bug me at all. The reason I think that the big lie typically annoys me so much is a few things. Number one, I often feel like the stakes aren't high enough to justify drawing it out as long as they do. You're not gonna fucking die, so just tell them the truth. Also, usually I see it most often with romance, where it's like you're dating this person and you know for a fact you are going to have to tell them this truth in order to continue the relationship. So just get it over with. Like, there's no question that it's gonna come out, so just fucking tell them. And also, the third thing is that most of the time that I've seen the big lie, it's like, okay, I have to tell them the truth, so I'm gonna do it now. And they get like 17 opportunities to do it, and they never take those opportunities. Or, what I hate the most, I think, is, okay, I gotta tell you something really serious, okay? Okay, what do you gotta tell me? Well, it's this really, it's just, I've been meaning to tell you forever. Just come right out and say it. And then, boom, somebody jumps into the room and is like, hey guys, we're having a pizza party. It's downstairs. And they're like, oh my God, I love pizza. Let's go. And just like runs out of the room. And the other person is like, wait, I needed to, oh, I guess I can't tell you. Bitch, just tell them. Like, be like, hey, okay, cool, we'll be there in a minute. Like, the interruption, and then like, oh God, I guess I can't tell them now. Yes, you could. Yes, you motherfucking could. This is so stupid and contrived, and it just feels like such a forced way of like continuing tension. And I just hate it, okay? In this book, none of that exists for me in this big lie situation. First of all, the stakes are very high. There is an element of, if I tell them the truth, I'm probably going to lose them in my life, and I don't want that. But like, there's more to it than that. There are other very negative repercussions that could happen depending on how this person reacts and what they do with the truth. So it's like, ooh, yeah, I 100% understand why you are so hesitant to just come right out and tell them this, because it's kind of a big fucking deal, like a huge deal. And like, there's one point where the character has like an opportunity in conversation, like an opening, and they even like lay after and they don't take it. And then after the fact, they're like, man, that was my chance. That was my chance to tell the truth, and I fucking didn't. God damn it. But again, like I said, it didn't piss me off. Like, when I read it, I wasn't like, God, fucking just do it. Like, they didn't get interrupted. It was just like a conversation, and they just like breezed past and like didn't explain or like didn't take the opportunity to be like, yeah, about that. They just kept on talking, and then like the conversation ended and like whatever. And then later they were like, man, I should have. And I was kind of like, I mean, yeah, you probably should have, but again, I understand why you're very hesitant to say it, because it's more than just like, oh, they might be mad at me, or like I might lose them in my life. Like, other much worse shit might happen. The themes I saw in this book, there are like two themes. They're kind of like intermingled that I can't really say because it would be spoilery. But the ones I can talk about, obviously oppression, the brutal caste system, like I said, trying to kind of erase the truth about this empire, kind of hiding things from history on purpose. And part of that is the lack of education thing, or blocking access to education, very much used as a tool to keep people down. Great like conversation about that. Really appreciated that. I just sneezed real aggressively, so sorry for the like watery eyes. Anyway, all of this to say, I absolutely loved this. I thought this was an incredibly solid debut, despite the beginning being a little slow for me. Like I said, I think that was mostly a me issue. I mean, it is a little bit slower paced, but like, duh. It's the beginning 20-ish% of a new book in a series of a fantasy world. Makes sense. But yeah, I just love it. Once it grabbed me, it fully grabbed me. When I finished it, I was like, okay, maybe I should give it 4.5 or 4.75 just because it took me a minute to get into it and whatever. But then I was just like, nah, man, the rest of it like made up for it. Even if it wasn't a me issue, which I think it mostly was, even if it was just like, yeah, no, it was just kind of like slower paced in the beginning. It just, the rest of it completely made up for it. And I just cannot wait for the rest of the series. I think it's a trilogy. It's going to be a trilogy. And yeah, I'm so fucking jazzed. There's like a reveal. There's several reveals at the end, towards the end of like world stuff. We're just like, oh shit. And there is a fucking bombshell of like a new mystery revealed at the very end that you're like, what? Like, I out loud as I was reading it said, what the hell? What? Like, excuse me? What the fuck? Like, so yeah, I feel like I cannot, you know, when you finish a book and you're just like, this just all worked. I can't even, I mean, I can say, obviously I've been talking for a long time, saying like what I loved about it, and I can specify things I loved about it, but it's also like there's just like an essence to it. There's just an element to it that I can't explain. It made sense. It worked. It was exactly my cup of tea. It was exactly like what I want a fantasy book to be when I pick them up. Like, this is what I want. Oh, just complex world building, complex characters, interesting character dynamics, just like great reveals and different plot points. It just, oh God, it's so good. Go read it. Go read it. Oh my God. You can try to get an e-arc still. It's still on NetGalley. All right, I will be done yammering now. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.